A little over 4 years ago now, I was sitting at a different desk, in a different home, talking to a different camera about Legacy of Kain. That was the first real video that I had made for this channel, a video that I poured my passion, my time, and my heart into to pay homage and gain interest in a series that I had loved since I was a child. That video was the one that gave me the opportunity to keep creating YouTube videos even after all of these years. If it weren't for Legacy of Kain, I wouldn't be where I am today. I ended that video the same way that the series had ended, on a high note with a sliver of hope that that series might be resurrected someday. 4 years later, I'm here to say that Legacy of Kain has returned, but not in the way that we would have expected. A new entry in the Legacy of Kain series has been released. It's actually the first one in 21 years, but I'm sad to say that it's very disappointing. It's probably the worst Legacy of Kain game in the entire series, and because of the reception and the game itself, I'm sad to say that this might be the end, at least for a while. Ascendance is a sort of prequel game that adapts a graphic novel called The Dead Shall Rise that released last year. The controls are clunky and awkward. The mechanics are incredibly simple, even for a standard action side-scroller. The level design is absolutely atrocious. The story is barely serviceable. At certain points, the written prose in the game does manage to glimpse the greatness of the original Legacy of Kain series, but that's all we'll ever see is a brief glimpse. The game itself does not feel like it's a part of the Legacy of Kain franchise at all, and while I do enjoy trying new things, the quality of this game pales in comparison to the original series. And I believe I've always enjoyed the Legacy of Kain series because it's stood a cut above the rest, and I expect more from it, and frankly, we deserve better. So that's what I'll be talking about today. I'll be reviewing Legacy of Kain Ascendance. I'll be talking about gameplay, mechanics, story, and everything in between. If you enjoy the video, be sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. Leaving a comment always helps as well. If you want to support the channel further, you can go subscribe to the Patreon, which is in the description below. I upload exclusive videos there like monthly media reports and reviews of video game movie adaptations. Hey Dad, it's me, your favorite son, and today I'd like to talk about Legacy of Kain Ascendance. The story of Legacy of Kain Ascendance actually begins years before its announcement and release. For context, in 2024, the Legacy of Kain series had been virtually dormant for almost 20 years. Barely any sign of a new entry, multiple canceled projects that were long in the rearview mirror, and a void of news about any resurgence in the franchise was all the fans had to feast on. This mostly changed in August of 2024 when BitBot Media launched their Kickstarter campaign to fund a new graphic novel titled Soul Reaver: The Dead Shall Rise. This was an official, canonical prequel graphic novel, the first genuinely new piece of media that Legacy of Kain fans had received in quite a long time. The original campaign was seeking $25,000 and ended up raising just under $1.5 million. A lot of this was because of the rewards that the campaign offered. If you pledged at higher levels, you could get physical versions of the graphic novel, you could get vinyls of the soundtrack that Cell Dweller was making for the comic, you could get skate decks, a Reaver replica, even latex masks of Raziel and Kain. It was essentially a massive and admittedly very expensive Legacy of Kain merch store that fans had been wanting for quite some time. But also, this was a community pulpit, a town square for Legacy of Kain fans to show their dedication and appreciation for the series. This was the moment where we could let the people in charge know just how much we wanted another entry in the franchise. It was this passion and dedication that caused this much money to be raised for a simple graphic novel.
When we first got involved with the graphic novel and we knew we were going to do a Kickstarter, we knew there was a fan base, but we didn't know how active because it had been so many years since something had really happened. And Crystal Dynamics had sent out a survey and had shared with us that like 100,000 people responded, but we didn't know, are people going to show up when a product is released? And that first day when we launched the Kickstarter, the fan reaction was overwhelming.
Personally, I was incredibly excited as this showed signs of life for the franchise that I loved. Shortly after this campaign, the Soul Reaver 1 and 2 remaster would be released, once again pushing the series back into the public eye. Since it was a Kickstarter, the Dead Shall Rise comic didn't actually release until October 29th, 2025. But to say that reactions were mixed would be putting it lightly. We'll talk about the actual comic when we get to the story section, but this is important because Ascendance is developed by BitBot Media and Freak Zone Games, and is also a direct adaptation of the Dead Shall Rise graphic novel. Its story is almost exactly the same. Freak Zone is mostly known for their work on the Angry Video Game Nerd games and more recently the Rocky Horror Picture Show game. They are mostly side-scrolling pixel art games with simple mechanics. Legacy of Kain Ascendance was released on March 31st, 2026 for the PlayStation 5, Windows, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox Series systems. Let's first talk about the biggest weakness that comes with Ascendance, its gameplay. The game itself is a very simple side-scroller. We can jump to get across platforms, and we can dash to get some extra distance on our jumps. We play multiple different characters across the course of the game though. Some of them have different traversal abilities. Alalith and Raziel, at certain points, can glide in the air using their wings. They can also beat their wings to get some extra height on their jumps and fly a bit higher. The Seraphan version of Raziel cannot do this, and neither can Kain. Kain is the only one that has a unique traversal ability. He can transform into a swarm of bats and teleport to specific areas. Most of these traversal abilities, including dash, require using the special meter, which I believe is called the lore bar. This means you can't fly infinitely, but you can sometimes pick up these small collectibles in the air that refill your meter. Traversal is extremely clunky. Jumping is generally fine, it's easy to get accurate precision jumps, but most of what comes in between the player and good movement is the level design. First of all, the layouts of the levels are not intuitive at all. You often can't see where you're supposed to go. There isn't good signposting to direct the player on the path. Sometimes the area that you need to enter looks exactly the same as a ledge that might kill you normally. Some of this is due to the camera angle. Other parts of it are just due to how levels are laid out. They are either just straight shots with absolutely no verticality, or they have verticality that isn't well laid out at all, so you don't really know where to go. The other part of the poor level design comes in the form of fire. The vampire characters that you play can be harmed by flame. Whether this flame is oil lit on the ground or torches on the wall, you'll take damage from running into it. In a lot of platforming games, environmental obstacles will prevent the player from just taking a straight path forward. They're introduced to complicate the platforming and traversal. The flames in this game are just wantonly placed with no regard for genuine level design. While the controls are sufficient, they are not good enough to make up for bad level design. So you have a cascading problem. Small issues gathering speed as the ball gets larger, rolling down the hill. Before you know it, you have a boulder made up of issues. Outside of traversal, the other large part of gameplay is the combat. Fighting enemies is mostly the same between characters. All player characters have a basic attack that either goes straight out in front of them or swipes across enemies. Regardless, it is effectively the same and doesn't mechanically do anything different. The combat system is so simple that the only other attack we can really do is a crouching attack. We can't downward attack or attack from a jump or anything. The characters that can fly can do an attack from the sky, a downward kick if they're above the enemy, and this move is actually incredibly overpowered. You can basically use it to just cheese about every boss in the game. Just bouncing on top of enemy heads like Mario is crazy for a Legacy of Kain game. Most characters aside from Seraphan Raziel can dash by using their lore meter and escape enemy attacks. One of the largest mechanics that we're supposed to use in combat is the parry. We can parry attacks to deflect them and then follow up attack for a one-shot kill. This is sort of useful and actually kind of satisfying for the first few levels, but once there's more than a few enemies on screen, it becomes negligible. The timing also seems way off for the most part. Whether this is due to hitboxes, a buggy system, or just bad telegraphing, who knows. Regardless, the system, like most of the others in the game, is not good. The main problem with the combat system is just that it rarely ever changes throughout the course of the game. There is little to no progression outside of switching characters through the linear story. Even though this game is only a few hours long, it wears out its welcome about halfway through. And the game never really attempts to switch things up. There's some new enemy types towards the end of the game, but it's not enough to save a system that's begging for something more. I would have liked if the game at least attempted to carry something over from the previous titles. A Metroidvania-style game would have worked incredibly well with this franchise. A semi-open world and different puzzles that we have to solve to gain new abilities to be able to proceed and fight more bosses. It just doesn't seem like the team wanted to spend the money to pull that off, though. I wouldn't even really mind a project with a smaller scope if it was well executed. But the level design and mechanics are all just so sloppy that it begs the question, why was this even made? And the gameplay isn't even the worst part of Ascendance, though. That burden unfortunately lies on the story. Ascendance essentially retells the story of the dead shall rise, but in a different chronology. So before we talk about Ascendance, let's talk about the dead shall rise and its reception. This section will include spoilers for both the Dead Shall Rise and Ascendance, so be warned. Also, I will not be recapping the Legacy of Kain story in general. If that's something you're interested in, check out my series retrospective on the Legacy of Kain. The link to that video will be in the description. The Dead Shall Rise begins before Soul Reaver. Raziel and his vampire brothers are fighting hunters in Nosgoth, seeking out Kain's favor, which has eluded them as of late. Raising a toast to a great success, a woman breaks into their throne room. She quickly bests Raziel in combat and tells him that she seeks the Heart of Darkness, a powerful artifact she needs for her journey. She shows off her new evolution that has both escaped Kain and his sons at this moment, a pair of wings. Alaleth, this new character, then flies off. Raziel is then left with an amulet she has bestowed upon him, which awakens memories in the vampire of a past long gone. In this past, two boys duel with wooden swords. This is Raziel and Matthias, his friend. Alaleth is revealed to be his sister, and she wants to join in on their battle, playing angels and demons, with Raziel playing the part of demon and Alaleth playing the part of angel. Through these visions, child Raziel sees the wraith version of himself, giving him a prophecy that he'll one day find a sword of great prominence, the Reaver. Raziel resists these memories, but is set upon by a strange raven. He's quickly put into a cocoon where he is stuck for some time. When he emerges, he sprouts a new pair of wings. Afterward, he seeks his sister out. She asks him once again for the Heart of Darkness, but Raziel tells her that it is lost to time. She also warns him against telling Kain about his new evolution. As she commands him once again, Raziel is beset by more memories from his past. Raziel has found a raven in the woods with a broken wing. He brings it to Alaleth, who believes they should just put it out of its misery. He then decides to keep it, spending his time gaining the being's trust and nurturing it back to health. Raziel then waits 3 days for the bird to return after setting it loose. It finally comes back, gifting him an amulet for his devotion. He then gives this necklace to Alaleth as a reminder to show kindness to those in need, those who need aid. In the present, Alaleth reveals that she has been lost to time, cursed by Mobius the Time Streamer. Now she has escaped this curse and found her way to Raziel. She tells Raziel to consult the amulet further, to delve into his own memories and find the location of the heart for her. Kain confronts Raziel about his absence and about the female vampire that he's been keeping secret from the others. Raziel tells him the truth, that she is his sister and seeks the Heart of Darkness. This infuriates Kain, and he asks for the woman's head, and yet Raziel still conceals his wings from his master. Raziel then dips back into his memories to see Alaleth speaking with Matthias. He was an apprentice blacksmith under his father at this time, and bestowed his new sword onto her. He then confesses his love and proposes to her. She was a lady of Thornlack, and he was just a mere blacksmith with no land or titles. They both know that Raziel will object to their marriage, but as they speak of this, Kain and his vampires have begun to siege the city. Kain kills Raziel and Alaleth's parents, offering Raziel the ability to join his ranks. Alalith finds Matthias near the river, assaulted and infected by a strange being named Vodalus. He has infected Matthias, bestowing him with a vampiric gift. She then feeds Matthias as Raziel walks in on this scene. Raziel then cuts off his head, severing Alalith's hand and her infection in the process. At least, he hopes. Alalith then asks for her own death. Raziel can't do it and realizes that she has already been infected. The amulet then shows Alalith awakening in her new form and burying Matthias's body. She then promises to seek revenge on her brother for killing her lover and taking her hand. She was exiled from Thornlac for her transformation and journeyed through the woods, being fed by the raven from before. The raven leads her back to a strange man, one who tells her that her only hope of escaping these woods is himself. He introduces himself as Kaisetsik and provides her blood, promising to replace her hand. He says that the amulet around her neck was meant for Raziel. He then infodumps about his backstory. He was cursed thousands of years ago and became half Hilden. Because of his nature, his two halves were caught between worlds, the human half being banished to the demon realm and his Hilden half cursed to wander the mortal plane. Through this conversation, Alalith determines that she must seek out Mobius to try and save Matthias, and also to get revenge against her brother. Kaisetsik agrees to help Alalith by restoring her hand and letting her leave these forests, but she must repay him by venturing through a secret Hilden portal between the material and demon realms and rescuing his human self. So Alalith becomes a half-vampire, half-Hilden sort of thing. She confronts Mobius, who tells her about the woods she just left, a place that evades time, an anomaly outside of the laws of the world. Mobius is concerned with Raziel, though. He is at a crossroads and he wants to ensure that he doesn't turn back. He believes that Raziel will do so if he is made aware of his sister's existence, so he decides to trap her in the time stream. Raziel then sees his own past without the amulet, his past as a Seraphan warrior, slaying dozens of vampires. As a warrior, Raziel is confronted by his sister, but she's unable to defeat him and disappears into the time stream. This causes Raziel to seek out Janos Audrin, setting him against the vampire progenitor for assumingly turning his sister into a beast. Raziel and his warriors then head to Janos' retreat with Mobius' staff in their hands. They see Raziel's wraith form on their way, and we see the scene from Soul Reaver 2 where Janos is killed and Raziel takes his heart. By the time they leave the retreat, though, Alalith has begun to slaughter Seraphan soldiers to send a message to her brother. We then see the same scene in Soul Reaver 2, where two Raziels confront each other and Seraphan Raziel is bested. Raziel then meets Alalith in the present at the tomb of the Seraphan. Alalith was eventually broken of her curse that originated with Mobius. After Kain killed him, his curse left her, and Kaisetsik told her that the only way to change time in the way that she chose was to create a paradox. She needs to create a paradox to go back to that day, and the heart to resurrect her beloved. Alalith then tells Raziel about her having already met Kain at the Pillars. Before Raziel was turned, she visited him there. She asked him for the favor of a paradox, but Kain needed something in return, so she told him of the location of the Seraphan tomb, implanting the idea that he resurrect these Seraphan warriors as his new brood. He tries to kill Alalith after getting this information, but the Reaver stops him for some reason. He tries to give her the Reaver and she denies it. We then see Kain resurrect Raziel, and in the present, Alalith asks Raziel if she should save him when she travels to the past, but he denies her. And he makes an offer of his own for her to join Kain's forces, but she too denies. A brother and sister on opposite paths. Alalith tells Raziel that she hates him and the two fight. He cuts his sister's wings and she falls. Before he leaves, she tells him to reveal his wings to Kain, that the only reason she told him to hide them was because she was jealous. We then see Kain betray Raziel and cast him into the abyss, setting the game's events into motion. After this, the Raven delivers the amulet to Alalith. She realizes that this means Raziel's memories will be gone. Kain and Alalith have a confrontation, and Kain stabs her in the head with the Reaver. This somehow causes a paradox, and she is revived with Hilden magic or something. She's then sent to the portal to seek out the demon realm to finish her business with Kaisetsik. Vodalus is another champion of the Hilden, but he cannot enter the demon realm. The comic then ends, hinting toward further adventures of Alalith in the demon realm. Ascendance's story is basically the same thing as The Dead Shall Rise. It starts as we control a Lilith being cast through time with Mobius's curse. She fights through Seraphan hordes, and she eventually confronts Raziel when he is a Seraphan commander. She is cast back into the time stream, and we play Seraphan Raziel as he heads to Janos' retreat. We have a fight against Janos at the summit, and the Seraphan rip out the heart before escaping the building. We then jump back to Alelith as she is taken to a different moment in time. Alelith begins claiming the hands of Seraphan soldiers, and she eventually realizes she must go to Kain. She is confronted by more soldiers, but can't fight them before being pulled through time. Seraphan Raziel finds his soldiers destroyed and is attacked by Wraith Raziel, who we have to run away from in a chase sequence. Raziel then converses with Mobius back at the Seraphan stronghold and is killed by himself. Alelith then finds herself at the pillars, and before Kain will give the woman her favor, she has to play Nosgoth Pillar Trivia with Ariel. After Kain is told about the tomb of the Seraphan, we head there to resurrect the fallen soldiers. Kain fights a tomb guardian and resurrects Raziel's corpse. Alelith then confronts Vampire Raziel and shows him the memories of the past. Raziel then chases her through the Sanctuary of the Clans. She puts him in the egg cocoon thing, and Raziel emerges with his new wings. We have a final duel with her, and then we have to fight the lieutenants at the pillars before Kain rips off Raziel's wings and casts him into the abyss. Kain then kills Alelith, she is resurrected, and taken to the portal into the demon realm. Now that we know the story of Ascendance, I can tell you why I dislike it and this direction for the story so much. The Dead Shall Rise and Ascendance are both incredibly flawed versions of the same story. First of all, a new Legacy of Kain game focusing on a new character is a ballsy idea in the first place. Fans of the series have already talked about how much Raziel was used to market The Dead Shall Rise, and how little he was actively present in the finished product. The story is essentially Alelith's story. The game alters this a little bit as we are actually playing Raziel and Kain for a good amount of the game as well, but most of the story revolves around Alelith and her fate. I don't think that introducing a new character to this series is a bad idea. You can't keep recycling the same characters in the series forever, and eventually you have to move on. What is a bad idea is to inextricably tie this new character in with these old ones in a way that forever alters the stories that the fans have loved. Because that's essentially what Ascendance and The Dead Shall Rise do. At the beginning of Soul Reaver 1, Raziel shows Kain his new evolution, his wings. These wings are the inciting incident for the rest of the story. It's the perceived jealousy by Kain that causes him to cast Raziel into the abyss. We learn later that this was all a part of Kain's plan, but now we actually learn that this was a part of Alelith's plan, that she caused Raziel to sprout wings, not because of an evolution in the vampire race, but because of her secret Hilden time travel amulet. This inextricably alters what is probably one of the best and most iconic moments in the series. The implication of Kain's jealousy, Raziel surpassing his master in form, and that same master striking him down becomes the impetus for the story. This is then forever altered in the later games. Now, Kain is not some mastermind controlling destiny behind the scenes. Alelith just happened to be there. It takes agency away from the main players that the fans are already endeared to and puts it on someone else. It also ruins the whole thread because we're told later that casting Raziel into the abyss was a move made to motivate him, but the game implies that Kain actually was jealous and that Alelith accidentally constructed the moment by pushing Raziel to show Kain his gift. It's also just a very convenient and poorly written manipulation. Also, why would Raziel even listen to her after all of this anyways? Speaking of Kain, the game also ridiculously places responsibility for the idea of Kain raising these Seraphan warriors on Alelith. Because she was the one that gave Kain this information, it means that somehow Kain wouldn't have had the simple idea to raise his mortal enemies as his own brood without her. It's this shoehorning of responsibility and weight in an effort to make a new character seem more powerful and important that makes this story so egregious. Permanently altering the canon of the series so that you can lend some credibility to a character that you created is insane. It's very obviously a way to have Alalith be powerful and strong right out of the gate so that she's not seen as truly weaker or less important than Raziel or Kain. And these aren't the only two examples of this happening. Of course, there's also the fact that the amulet lets Raziel know that he was a Seraphim before. He originally found this out when he entered the tomb in his wraith form. This is a large moment for him, realizing the walking contradiction that he was. The ironic nature of his destiny and fate was laid bare in front of him. In this story, he is told the same information prior, but it basically means nothing to him. Also, he doesn't remember any of this information later, very conveniently, because the amulet is taken from him. So this is why he never mentions any of this, or Alalith, in the later games. The whole thing is just filled with these convenient contrivances. These twists and turns don't shock you because you're already wondering how they're going to fit these retcons into the story. Without talking about the lore changes, there's also just some things that the game and comic get straight up wrong about the lore. One of the funniest things in The Dead Shall Rise is a panel that just says the Heart of Darkness stopped beating after it was ripped from Janos' chest, even though the whole thing with the heart is that it always beats. Also, there's the question of the paradox. At the end of the game, Alalith is killed and then brought back because of something. I'm not entirely sure. This is said to be a paradox, but there are 3 paradoxes in Legacy of Kain. The first is when Kain kills William the Just in the past. This paradox is caused by the presence of 2 of the same blades, the Reaver that Kain has and the one that William has. The second happens when Raziel spares Kain in front of William's tomb in Soul Reaver 2. And the third happens when Kain prevents Raziel from being consumed by the Reaver at the end of the same game. All of these paradoxes share something in common. In every single paradox, 2 Reavers are present, hence the term paradox. How could a version of the same sword from the past and future meet, causing events which alter the timeline? In Ascendance, Kain just kills Alalith with the Reaver. He also can't kill her earlier in the game. The Reaver prevents him from striking her. Now, as far as I'm aware, there aren't like a written set of rules about paradoxes, but it just doesn't seem like the previous requirements are present here. Now, my theory is actually that the writers had some reveal planned for the future that would make this make sense. Like, Alalith is somehow imbued with the Reaver already, and she doesn't remember it or whatever, and that causes the paradox that revives her or something. I don't know. It could possibly be because the Reaver knows that if it kills her, then Raziel won't be cast down or something, but the Reaver shouldn't even have a will of its own at this point. I don't know, and a lot of things don't make sense here. On top of that, even if you want to say it's Raziel stopping his sister from being killed, he shouldn't even know who his sister is because he doesn't have the amulet and doesn't remember her in any of the games. On top of that, the writing for this game is just terrible. The entire premise is basically that Alalith is the same thing that Raziel was to Kain, but for Raziel. She is seeking him out, thinking he's a villain when there's actually more at play. The problem with this is that her logic is incredibly flawed in the first place. The whole thing is basically based on a misunderstanding that the audience is already clued in on. We know that Raziel only killed Matthias and chopped Alalith's hand off because he was trying to save her. So the fact that she goes on a journey for revenge, when we already know that she's pretty much in the wrong, doesn't really endear the audience to her. Also, in Soul Reaver 1, the audience was in the dark about what Kain was planning. He was set up as the villain at first because both Raziel and the audience thought that he cast Raziel into the abyss out of jealousy. Only later is it revealed that this was part of a larger scheme. Because we already know the folly of Alalith's ways, the audience doesn't sympathize with her. They are already aware that what she's doing is folly. The illusion has already been withdrawn, so the only one that's clueless is Alalith, and the audience knows that. There's also just some moments that get the characters entirely wrong. Like in The Dead Shall Rise, Kain has this weird outburst moment where he shatters a trophy room when he finds out that Alalith is looking for the Heart of Darkness. It's incredibly out of character and doesn't make sense for Elder Kain at all. There's a lot of other nitpicky things that I could get into, like how did Mobius gain the ability to basically permanently trap someone in the time stream? And if he could do this before, why didn't he ever do it again? Would have been super useful for his plans later. Outside of all of that, the basic writing quality is just super low. There are some points where it gets into a good flow, but usually this only lasts a line or two. This is most apparent when comparing the new dialogue from Ascendance and when the game is using old dialogue from the games.
Where has Mobius's wretched curse cast me now? Am I doomed to drift endlessly through the mists of time?
So, you've come to avenge that filthy parasite and reclaim his foul heart. You're a righteous fiend, aren't you?
At one point, they even make reference to a Star Wars meme, which is just fucking unbelievable. Criticizing this story this much, I feel like I have to provide another side. How could they have gone about the idea of a Legacy of Kain prequel differently from a story perspective? Well, for one, I think the idea of a Seraphan Raziel game would be great. We could play as Seraphan Raziel hunting down vampires across Nosgoth with his brothers. We could learn more about his brothers, further flesh out those characters, and add some good context to them when we eventually meet them in Soul Reaver. Or you could create a prequel game with these characters when Raziel is still serving under Kain. Combine this with the Metroidvania setup I talked about earlier, and I think you would have an entry that fans would actually be interested in. Of course, you'd have to make it more grounded than the series is used to, but I think that comes with the territory. I think there's so much of an established continuity already that trying to just jump in and alter the timeline like they've done is not going to go well. Outside of story, for some more miscellaneous criticism, the game has a real aesthetic problem. I think for the most part, the pixel art looks decent. The characters are well embodied, especially with the low detail and relatively small pixel size each sprite is working with. I think the environments generally look decent, but the game for some reason decides to include like 4 different dueling art styles when it comes to cutscenes. During some cutscenes, we get these talking heads, drawings of characters that just kind of idly bob up and down. During other cutscenes, the style will be full pixel art. In particular, the flashback scenes to Raziel look like they belong in an entirely different franchise. The finale in the game is one large animated cutscene, and this looks just really bad. I know I said before that I wanted a Legacy of Kain animated series, but not like this. Some of the characters look really off. The final style that the cutscenes use is this throwback, low-poly PS1 look, which actually looks pretty great for the most part. It's a really interesting style, and I would have liked if this game was either entirely like this, or all the cutscenes were, at least. It harkens back to the era that this series came from, and I think a project with this style could be really good, at least aesthetically. Alas, it's only used for the Pillar Trivia game show scene and Raziel's resurrection. Unfortunately, these 4 styles do not mesh together well at all. Jumping back and forth between these leaves the viewer with tonal whiplash. I have no idea why the team decided to do this, because the project just comes off like it doesn't have a clear vision. If I had to wager a guess, I'd say they were testing out different styles for future projects or something. I don't know. One of the biggest selling points of Ascendance was that it included almost the entire original cast from the games. Michael Bell returns as Raziel, Simon Templeman returns as Kain, Richard Doyle returned as Mobius, hell, even Anna Gunn returned as Ariel. Unfortunately, a few of the actors, in particular Michael Bell, just sound a bit too old. You can hear the age in their performance, and it really ages the character as well. And I'm not sure if this was the direction's fault or the talent, but some people really just felt like they were phoning it in.
Janos, no!
The performances were probably the part I was most excited for, but I didn't get a lot out of them. Simon Templeman is probably doing the best job here out of everyone, as Kain mostly still sounds like Kain. When I made my video on the Legacy of Kain series, one of the things I wanted to end on was how passionate the fan base was. I knew this then, and the fan base has proven it even now, giving over $1 million to show that the fans truly wanted this series to return was not something I expected. But I should have known if anyone had that kind of devotion, it would be the Legacy of Kain fan base. Whether it was resurrecting lost ports, having one of the most detailed and best wikis out there, or finding cut content, the fan base has always persisted. And that's why I think they deserve a lot more than what Ascendance offers them. A game that alters the canon of the series for the worse. A game that disrespects the Legacy of Kain canon by forcing the character's will onto it. A game that isn't even worth the time that it takes to play it, not for the story and not for the incredibly simple amount of gameplay that this project offers. And I don't mean to shirk the work that the people put into this game, but I do think that it is just misguided. I'm sure that a lot of people that worked on this game are genuinely fans of the series, but this end product is clearly not what fans wanted, and they are showing that. But the reason that Ascendance feels so disappointing is that we've been building to something like this for a while. Since the Kickstarter and the new remasters, I've been expecting something to come out of this, for this hype to reach some sort of pinnacle. Whether this was a new entry in the series or a Blood Omen remake, I knew that we would get something definitive. And Ascendance feels like it's taken the wind out of my sails a little bit. That hope that I spoke of 4 years ago feels a bit far to see now. And honestly, if this is what we're going to get from the Legacy of Kain series moving forward, then I would rather we just let it rest. Maybe the dead should just stay dead. Bye, Dad.